The Tigers dropped 3 of 4 against the Angels. We talk about the series as a whole, as well as the ramifications of the weekend going forward. All today on Locked On Tigers.
You are Locked On Tigers, your daily Detroit Tigers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of Locked On Tigers. I'm, of course, your host, Scott Bentley. Today is Monday, July 1st, 2024. Thank you so much for making Locked On Tigers your first listen every single day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts, including YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode of Locked On Tigers is brought to you by Tax Network USA. Did you know that it's never too late to resolve your tax issues with the IRS? Don't wait, reduce your tax debt, and get help from a team of licensed tax professionals. Call 1-800-549-1000 or visit tnusa.com/lockedon. Happy Monday to all. Happy July to all as well as we enter a new month here. Welcome, everyone. Welcome. What do I usually say? Welcome in, welcome all, whatever. Welcome aboard to another edition of the show. We have a weekend of Tigers baseball to discuss, where the Tigers dropped 2 of 3 on the weekend, but obviously, if you go back, it was a 4-game set. They dropped 3 of 4 at the hands of the Angels in LA. This weekend specifically, they lose 5-2, 6-5, and then win on Sunday 7-6 in what was an absolutely ridiculous final inning or two of a baseball game. Let's just jump right into it because this was a really, really rough weekend. We're going to talk about at the end of the show in our stuff segment about the side effects, I guess, of this weekend and what it kind of means for where the team is at going into a busy July with the draft, the All-Star break, and obviously the trade deadline. But just in a vacuum, this series as a whole, the Angels aren't good. That is not a good baseball team. They are now 36-47 after taking 3 of 4 from the Detroit Tigers. You look at that lineup, you look at that pitching staff. Frustrating. Very frustrating. Now, frustrating given what the expectations of the Tigers were going into the year, or were early on in the season. It's always frustrating to lose, but I don't think this is like a massive surprise to anybody at this point either. You know what I mean? So what went wrong? I mean, aside from, again, just saying the whole weekend, which I think is somewhat fair, the bullpen specifically was dreadful this weekend. Shelby Miller was really brutal all series. Bo Brisky, I tweeted this out Friday or Saturday, and I basically said I'm done talking highly about relievers on this baseball team. I'm really over it. And the reason why is because anytime you compliment a reliever, the next time they are in a high leverage situation, they completely implode. And that has happened time and time again this entire season. It's happened with Shelby Miller, right? Like after he got back from injury, his fastball looked the best it had looked all season. I was like, okay, immediately. Gets put in high leverage, reverts back to struggling. Andrew Chafin, talked very highly of him in the month of April, has been struggling pretty mightily the last month and a half. I mean, you don't have to keep going, right? Bo Brisky, again, this weekend. I've been talking very highly of him for the last several weeks. Naturally, he goes into the game with a lead, finally, instead of just pitching low leverage, nothing baseball, and gives up runs and gets rocked. Will Vest had a fantastic month of May. Immediately started giving up more runs in June. It's just, it's without fail. And like Shelby Miller obviously had the toughest trip of the players that were, pitched out of the bullpen this weekend, right? Again, I already mentioned Bo Brisky. Will Vest gave up a run or two. Alex Faedo gave up a run on Sunday. but the bullpen has taken a massive step backwards for a while now. This also isn't new. This pen right now is Jason Foley, who I love dearly, but doesn't get swings and misses. And that's kind of it. High leverage is a completely different breed than low leverage, right? And there's some analytics that are trying to take into consideration the leverage of the game and with relievers specifically, right? But none of these guys are have been good enough this year, outside of, again, maybe Foley, to consistently be given high leverage. It's like, what are we even supposed to do at this point? Genuinely. You just play musical chairs. You just play the revolving door game over and over and over again all year. Like, all right, well, you've been good in low leverage. Let's give you a shot. Okay, you get popped. You're done. Let's try somebody else now. And we just keep doing that over and over. The 2022 Tigers bullpen was really solid, right? You had a legitimate pen that year, and it was a tragedy that it was completely wasted by one of the worst offenses I've ever seen and anybody's ever seen in our lives. The Tigers traded those assets away because what point is a good bullpen on a team that was awful, right? Not much. I agreed with the decision to trade those pieces away and try to get assets. Now, 2 years later, a season and a half later, you have no bullpen, and the assets you got Matt Vierling, you got Sawyer Gibson-Long, you got Justyn-Henry Malloy. Then that's pretty much it. Andrew Chafin you let walk, and then you got back, and he's been not very good this year. And then you kept, obviously, Lang and Foley. It's not great. It's really not great. Amongst many things going throughout the organization right now, the outlook of the bullpen is certainly one of them. And I don't want that to get just like swept under the rug because the offense has been as bad as it is. Speaking of the offense, though, that also hasn't been great. A pretty pathetic display of offense in general from innings like 7 through 10, through extras, obviously, on Saturday, pretty much all of Friday. Just like brutal to watch on a daily basis, to be honest. And like we can go through the lineup again as we always do, right? We can do that again. We can play the OPS game that everybody hates. Like Mark Canha has a sub 600 OPS since the start of May. Gio Urshela, it barely had. I mean, he just went on like an 0 for 24 skid or something before getting a hit this weekend. The bottom half of your lineup is all dudes who have high 500 or low 600 OPSs. It's awful. It's really, really not great. And so that is where any optimism that I had, and we'll talk about this a little bit more at the end of the show, about like a turnaround or about hanging on to, being like a middle of the pack team, has kind of gone by the wayside. This lineup is brutal. On paper, eye test, analytically, it doesn't matter how you take in the game of baseball. This is a brutal lineup. Let's talk about what went right, and then we'll talk some stuff. Okay, we'll do all of that right after this. Got to talk to y'all today about our friends over at Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the #1 daily fantasy sports app in America with over 5 million active members. Prize Picks is the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Unlike other apps on Prize Picks, it's just you against the numbers. You pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections, and you watch the winnings roll in. You can get in on the daily action with your friends and become a part of Prize Picks community today. You can now win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks with as little as 4 correct picks. You can turn $10 into $1,000. It is so much fun. You take a look on a daily basis, genuinely, like daily fantasy, they really mean daily fantasy. There's always so much to get in on. Starting pitching strikeouts is something I talk about a lot, but they also have really fun things like player fantasy points for baseball. You also have a lot of great action in the WNBA as well. There's a lot of great soccer being played right now. It is truly a really, really fun time to get in on all of the great action over at Prize Picks. So download the Prize Picks app today and use code LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match up to $100. That's code LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match up to $100. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy. Also going to talk to you all about our friends over at Tax Network USA. Here on Locked On Tigers, we pride ourselves in getting you the latest news from your team, whether it's the offseason, the draft, spring training, or the playoffs. It's year-round. You know what else is year-round? Collection season. Just because tax season is over doesn't mean the IRS will stop coming after you for unfiled taxes. The IRS can garnish your wages, levy your bank accounts, and even seize your property. Don't let the IRS target you. Let the licensed professionals and tax experts at Tax Network USA go to bat for you. With over 14 years of experience and an A-plus rating by the Better Business Bureau, Tax Network USA has saved their clients over $1 billion in tax debt. Whether you owe taxes, have complicated matters that require tax planning, or finally hit that parlay this season and need help correctly filing, call 1-800-549-1000 or visit tnusa.com/locked on. And be sure to mention Locked On Tigers at checkout, and you'll receive a $250 discount for their services. All right, everybody, welcome back here. Segment 2 of Locked On Tigers. Appreciate y'all so much for tuning in, as always, making us your first listen every single day. Shout out to the everydayers that do tune in every day, especially in seasons and stretches like this. I truly do appreciate each and every one of you greatly. Also, be sure to check out Locked On Sports Today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel program for you every day, bringing you the biggest stories without all the screaming maybe that Fox Sports or ESPN give you on a daily basis. Again, you can subscribe for free on YouTube, Locked On Sports Today, or check it out in the Amazon Fire TV channels app. Okay, so let's talk about what went right this weekend. They did win a ball game, which is just the lowest of bars against a team that is not very good in the Angels, but they did win a ball game. They did get some good performances throughout the weekend as well. And I think this is the first time in a while we've been able to say this was a really solid weekend for starting pitching as a whole. Kenta Maeda, Reese Olson, and Casey Mize all had really good final lines and just did really well out there on the mound. Really big for Kenta Maeda. Just any good start, to be completely honest. And it was a fine one, right? He got punched in the mouth early, gave up 2 runs in the first inning, but recovered pretty quickly and ended up going 5+, almost 6 innings, and didn't give up any more runs after that. Kept the Tigers in the game. That loss is certainly not on him. Then you have Reese Olson on Saturday, who was absolutely fantastic. 9 strikeouts this time around. The slider he has is such a weapon. I know I'm not telling you anything you don't already know, but just on a consistent basis, that pitch is so good. It's easily his best pitch. He has had just such awful luck in terms of team support all season. And I didn't say run support, like overall general like team support, defense behind him, offense, just game situations, right? Like, I mean, Saturday was a blown game. They should have won that and just completely blew it and threw up on themselves. Dude just can't seem to catch a break, but that is out of his control. And the things that he can control, he has been phenomenal. I thought the command on Saturday was especially solid, especially for his changeup. That is another pitch that he has no fear throwing to anybody. The fact that he can throw it to righties and lefties is so great. I talk about that all the time, but I thought he was really kind of dotting it. And I thought the fastball works really well too, which has kind of been my one criticism of him this season. And I think lately it's been even better than it was early on in the year. So I was very, very impressed, as I'm sure everybody was. It's just really unfortunate that it's in another loss because the Tigers just refuse to pick this guy up. And then Casey Mize actually left the outing earlier than I would imagine he was going to leave. on Sunday. After the game, he made it sound like it was just cramps in his leg. So we'll see what happens with that. But it didn't look like it was super serious. It looked like it was pretty precautionary. But he kept the ball on the ground a lot. Only had 2 strikeouts. Didn't have crazy swing and miss stuff. I know not this start, but the one before that, he had a ton of swings and misses, the most that we've seen from him probably ever. And there was a little bit of optimism of, okay, like maybe we can get some strikeouts and some swing and miss stuff from him. We didn't get that at all, really. Again, just ended with the 2 Ks, but did keep the ball on the ground a lot. And I think that that's like every start that goes by that just looks like it's going to be more and more the reality of his career. Right. And look, like there's nothing wrong with that necessarily. Like he's proven he can be a good and effective ground ball pitcher, right? Like he didn't get any swings and misses in 2021. And that is what, a 3.7. He had a sub-4 ERA. So like there's a place in the league for him. He will be an effective guy. You know, if his Tigers tenure ends down the road over the next couple of seasons, some other team will absolutely pick him up for either being, you know, a keep the ball on the ground back end rotation guy, or, you know, being, you know, trying to see if they can get him to get more swings and misses and whatnot. But he had a shutout. Like he didn't allow any runs in 5 1/3. I'm not going to complain about it. It's just it obviously and clearly, based on what we've seen this season, just puts a cap on the ceiling that that he could potentially reach, rather. But this was an effective game in keeping the ball on the ground against the Angels, and that's exactly what he did. So no issue with that necessarily. And the splitter, particularly, it was a really good ground ball pitch rather than a swing and miss pitch. So that's kind of been the roller coaster of 2024 for Casey Mize. Has been a wild one, and this one's just kind of another stop along the way. Just another data point, and we'll see what happens with him his next time out there. But been a lot of ups and downs his last few starts. Justyn-Henry Malloy, I think, had a pretty solid weekend. Obviously, had the big game on Sunday, the inside the park homer, which we'll talk about more in a second. Jake Rogers also just, it feels like crushes whenever he's in LA. They mentioned that on the broadcast, brought some of the numbers up for that. He had a really solid weekend, obviously DH'd on Sunday as well because of that. But good for Malloy. Good to see him get going. And then Carson Kelly had a big day on Sunday. And that leaves me with the question of the future of Carson Kelly. I think he's got 710, 715, 720, somewhere around there OPS now on the season after the home run and whatnot on Sunday. I'm starting to think that he could probably be a part of a trade at the deadline. If you're expecting Carson Kelly to be traded like on his own and get you a huge return, I still don't think he has that type of value, but he is playing himself into being, you know what? Hey, we can throw in Carson Kelly in this deal. You can get a solid backup catcher who's hitting pretty well this year and is fine defensively. And maybe that can help the Tigers get over the edge on a deal that they're close to, closing with somebody, and need a little bit more sprinkled on top to kind of get over the edge. So that's kind of how I envision him. I don't think that Carson Kelly, you're going to be able to just like trade by himself and get 2 prospects for that, people are really excited about or anything like that. But I think there is a possibility that he's in a trade at the deadline. At this point, I would be pretty surprised if we got past the trade deadline and he was still on the team. That being said, I've said that a lot over the last couple of years, and that keeps happening, right? We said it with, Avila's last trade deadline. We said that with quite a few players. We said that last year with Erod, and Carson Kelly's not on the magnitude of those players, and they still made it through. So I think that there is something to be said for maybe him just if he doesn't have a market, he doesn't have a market. That's really what it comes down to. But I think, especially if he keeps hitting, right, that fairly obvious, Captain Obvious statement there. I think that you can probably put him in a deal and then give Dylan Dingler an opportunity, who's been hitting pretty darn well lately in AAA Toledo and has been pretty sound defensively for, at least the last couple of years, but most of his professional career. So that would kind of open the door and kind of benefit the Tigers in two different ways there. So that's pretty much it. Not a very great weekend, so not a whole lot. But starting pitching was good. It was just the bullpen and the lack of any clutch hitting on this team late in games that really cost them. And that's why we find ourselves having dropped 3 of 4 from the Angels. Let's talk stuff. We're going to zoom out a little bit and talk a little bit more big picture. We will do that right after this. Got to tell tale today about our friends over at FanDuel. FanDuel is the absolute best in the business. I love sports. I love them so much and never want them to stop pretty much ever. But as the playoffs wind down here and end in hockey and basketball, we get fewer and fewer games, and the sports just aren't sportsing like I want them to. But FanDuel lets me keep the sports going whenever I want. All I have to do is open the app and dream up bets anytime I'm in the mood. And this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day all summer long. So head over to FanDuel.com/lockdown and start making the most out of your summer. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. All right, everybody, welcome back here. Third and final segment of Locked On Tigers. Appreciate y'all for tuning in. As always, let's talk stuff. Thought the Justyn-Henry Malloy home run, the inside the Parker, was a pretty cool moment, actually. He roped that baseball. I mean, really, that was absolutely on a line and right on the screws. And it's nice to see him get rewarded for that and not have that just be a really, really long fly out, especially on the road, right? Like you kind of expect that in Comerica. But you're on the road, you finally, lace a baseball after struggling. So it was nice to see him get rewarded. It was a true inside the Parker. I mean, the center fielder, Mickey Moniak, still did not play that very well whatsoever. He walked to the baseball. I was blown away by the lack of urgency by either outfielder. By who's that? Taylor Warden left. Neither of them had any urgency to get to that baseball and allowed Malloy, who's not, known for his speed, to just cruise around the bases. And there wasn't even a play at the plate. I was really stunned by how slow and again, I guess lack of urgency really is how I kind of view it. Looked like the outfielders had out there. That would have drove me up a wall. But yeah, good to see him get rewarded for a hard hit ball. And hopefully, again, had a hit on Saturday, had a couple of hits on Sunday. Hopefully this is something that we can snowball into a hot stretch. But I've said that about 15 times with every single player on this team this year. And outside of Riley Green, that hasn't really, or maybe Kerry Carpenter too, but he's hurt. So hasn't really come true very often. Matt Vierling gets scratched on Sunday, took a ball off the foot against Ben Joyce, who notoriously throws harder than almost anyone in baseball, and took a foul ball off the foot against him. AJ said that his mobility was pretty limited, and so they just weren't going to take any chances, and they decided to bench him because, of course, one of the only hitters with an OPS over 700, even on this team, is going to get hurt because, of course. So talking big picture here, I'm pretty much done talking about this ball game. I just want to talk about some, where we're at in the season. I know we did that kind of on Friday's show as well, but this is kind of a different angle. You are now 8 games below 500, right? Throughout June and late May, the big thing that kept a lot of optimism or any optimism, I guess I should say, not a lot, but it kept any optimism for the fan base and for me specifically as well, was that, even when they were struggling, the record still wasn't that bad because they got off to the really good start, right? Start off 5-0. They got off to a really good start the first couple of weeks of the season. So every time there was criticism, it came with, well, that all being said, right, they're still around 500, right? That was what I said a lot, and what a lot of people would comment, what I would criticize is hey, that all being said, we're still, kind of in it, right? And I think that is officially gone after this weekend. And I know for some of you, they're like, brother, it's been gone for a while. I completely understand, but I think for even the most optimistic fan there is, I think that's gone. And because if you look at it and you view it as, checkpoints and kind of, I don't know, like ledges when you're climbing a cliff or something like that. And you really look at when, after every game, and we again have those conversations of, oh, like the offense sucks, but we're still a game over 500. We're still 500. We're still 2 games under 500. We're still 5 games under 500. It incrementally you are collapsing, right? If you zoom out and don't look at the small sample size, you are trending down linearly, right? Like it is a straight decline, no uptick. And now we're almost 10 under. You know what I mean? Like, I hope I articulated that well. Like, this is, I understand the record could be worse. Take away the 5-0 start. Yeah. you since the 5-0 start, right? You're, what is that, 13 games under 500? And I know that's a slippery slope and you can't play the just take away games type of, scenarios, right? I understand it's a very slippery slope. They did play those games, they won them, but like it again is just, I'm trying to articulate that I understand it 8 games under 500 maybe doesn't seem like the world to some people. We're not, 15 games under like we usually are maybe at this point. But if you zoom out, it's really not a lot better, and we're about to be there by most approximations, myself included, my own included. It also would be one thing if this team was this offense was full of young players that had a chance to like explode, right? Like you can point to Colt Keith or Malloy maybe and be like, hey, like there's still some upside there. Maybe they can turn it around and really get going. And sure, that's totally fair for those two. But besides that, it's really just Riley Green and a bunch of guys who they aren't going to be great or even very good hitters over long periods of time. Like we know what most of this lineup is. We can go through the individuals, right? Like Mark Canha, sub 600 OPS since May. Gio Urshela, we talked about him earlier. We know what those guys are. We know what Andy Ibanez is. We know what Matt Vierling is likely going to be. We know what Jake Rogers is. Carson Kelly's not going to roll up with an 850 OPS going into the trade deadline. There isn't a high ceiling on them. Like, how is the turnaround going to even happen? And I know I'm really just talking into the void here, and most people are like, dude, who are you talking to? Like, there is no turnaround. We're aware of that. I understand. I feel like this really was kind of the final nail in the coffin. This weekend was. And so now expectations shift, and you're kind of just in the same position that we've been in for the last, 8 Julys, which is just see what we got in individual development and start talking about the draft and the trade deadline. But I think the days of, getting, I say this and then I'll get really mad tomorrow or 2 days from now when we lose again. But I think the days of getting upset on series to series losses or whatnot are slowly passing us by because everyone's kind of understanding the expectations aren't what they were going into the year when a lot of people thought this team could be mildly competitive. I think this weekend really kind of highlighted that in a big way. That's all. Tomorrow's show, we have an off day on Monday today as you're listening to this. So tomorrow's show, we are going to bring on Chris and Rogelio from Tigers Minor League Report and start your draft coverage. I'm trying to game plan it a little bit because this is actually the last off day we have until the draft. So I'm not going to have a chance to, I guess I could do a Saturday and give everyone like an extra show for the week. I don't know, like the Saturday before something. I think I did that last year. So maybe we can do something like that. I'm also considering maybe 2 segments on games and 1 segment at the end of shows on like a draft profile, something like that. Because I do want to really get the discussion going. We got 2 weeks until the MLB draft. So I really want to get the wheels turning on our draft coverage here because I'm pretty fascinated with this draft class. I'm pretty excited for it. I think that the Tigers have an opportunity to get someone effective even though they're not picking super high this year, I think that there's an opportunity to get an impact player. There's a pretty deep draft class, so we are going to have a lot of draft coverage here. I just got to really game plan and kind of map out how I want that coverage to look. That's all. So obviously, again, tomorrow we're going to have the Tigers minor league report guys on. The reason why we have them on as well is because I will be on their draft show for, I believe, the 4th or 5th year in a row. We've already been doing this for a while. Great guys. Just had lunch with Raj a week or two ago. Very, very good guys, good people, and very, very much know their draft classes and their minor league baseball and their major league baseball. Of course, they do Motor City Metrics every week. So that'll be fun. So that'll be tomorrow's show and then the draft show as well. I'll be posting a lot about it, so you won't get kind of blindsided by where to find it. And yeah, I think that's pretty much it. Oh, really quickly, Tigers. There was an article that came out by MLB Trade Rumors that the Tigers, quote, haven't decided to be sellers yet. That's hilarious. There is no way they have not decided they're going to be sellers yet. The only thing that could make them not is genuinely if tomorrow the Tigers just started an 8 or 10 game win streak. That's literally it. Outside of a massive win streak to somehow will this team back to 500, they are selling. Maybe it's a negotiation tactic to be like, oh, we don't have to. We can give Jack Flaherty the qualifying offer. And then when he leaves for somewhere else, we can, get an extra draft pick next year. Maybe it's just negotiation in that form, but like they're going to sell. I don't want any part of the fan base to read that and be like, oh, maybe. If you haven't figured out by my tone this episode and by the conversation we just had at the start of this segment, I'm not very high on the team the rest of the year. I would be flabbergasted if they did not sell. When's the last time you heard someone say flabbergasted? Thanks for making Locked On Tigers your first listen every single day, free and available wherever you get your podcasts, including YouTube. Shout out to the everydayers. I appreciate you all greatly, and we'll be back with some draft coverage tomorrow. All right, peace and love. Going to therapy's dope. I'll catch y'all then, baby. Go Tigers.